Yeah, I'm starting up now.
Oops. What are we doing here? Two, I think that's the one I'm looking for.
And for those joining us, we'll be starting up in about 2-3 minutes.
Can you see that, David? Is that up? Or?
I can. Yep.
Do I need my camera on?
You can leave your camera on. That actually looks good.
What does?
You're the video and the slides. One more minute, Jeff. And you are live on Facebook. Well, since I'm here, Jeff, I'll give you a quick welcome. We'll get started. Right. So good morning and welcome to another Topical Tuesday webinar. Thank you for joining us and this lovely weather out here. I don't know what y'all got wherever you are, but we got about 9 inches where my house is. How do I know? I shoveled the driveway to be nice to the wife. Welcome to our session on preparing an asset management plan. Geoff Scott is going to lead the way, and I'm going to go dark and let him take the lead. So it's all yours, Geoff. You can describe those settings.
So you got some of these audio settings. He's got questions. Go into the Q&A tab down at the bottom and type in your questions, and we'll try to get to them before the end of the session here. Professional development hours. We are offering one through New York State. If you are in another state, please reach out to your LTAP center, and we'll work with them to make sure that you get that credit for that. Only the person registered will actually get the PDH. It's the only way we can keep track of it. And then send us your certificate of attendance, and that'll allow us to send back to you a PDH, because we'll send you an attendance deal. And any other states, as I mentioned, just check with your LTAP center, and we'll work with them to make sure you get what you need. So we'll start with preparing an asset management plan. Now, as we all know, highway departments, public work departments have some of the most expensive assets in the municipality. It can be anything from the equipment. We all know what a truck goes for anymore. But signs, culverts, your roads and streets, those are a major investment. Even the buildings you're working in and the equipment you're using are assets. How you manage them can vary. But when it comes to the larger assets, it's important to be a little bit more conscious of where that funding is coming from and how you're spending it. And why do we care? Well, when it comes to roads and streets, 52% of the roads are actually owned by towns. Only 13% of the roads in New York State are owned and maintained by the New York State DOT. Counties actually have 18%. You can see villages at 6%, and the cities have 11% of the roadways. And why, even further, to go further into it, why is that a concern? Well, you look at where the funding comes. This is a 2016 numbers, but that funding for those roads and anything that we're spending within our departments come from our local pockets, our local tax dollars. 89% of the funding we use for maintenance expenses come right directly out of our local pockets. So it's something to keep in mind, that, be conscious of where that money's coming from and how to spend it. 10% come from the state. You can see just about 1% comes from the federal government. How that's going to be impacted through the next few years is it's a quagmire. We don't really know at this point. When it comes to pavement costs, roads have been built, most of the local roads, the town roads, a lot of them have been built with intent of being built, but a lot of them have just kind of evolved over the years, just layers upon layers. Some may have started out as Indian trails, gone to horse trails, the wagon trails, and then was widened as the roads and the vehicles expanded. So none of them are really designed or built with any intent as far as carrying the load or doing the purpose that they're supposed to do. So they tend to fail a little bit more often and a little more frequently. So we need to be conscious of that problem, and with the price increases, we need to be cognitive of that and be able to try to maintain our roads, keep them in good shape, as well as other assets. We're all familiar with this type of graph here in some form or another. It's a pavement condition. Again, this is for pavement, but it kind of goes with a lot of the other equipment and stuff that we own. Over a period of time, about 75% of that life, you're going to get about a 40% drop in the value of that road or the quality of that road. At that 40% drop, then you're going to start to see some small cracks, maybe some wearing of the surfaces. The roads aren't going to be what they were when they're new, but they're still in pretty good shape. The base is in good shape. That's when we need to do our work, do these rehabilitation techniques, put a new surface on it, seal the cracks, keep that road good, protect that base from getting soft. Because once it passes that 75% time, those cracks open up, let that moisture into the base, and that's where our problems come as far as failure with the roads. And the same concept with any of the piece of equipment. Once you let it go beyond a certain point, it kind of compounds itself and causes problems. And the idea behind asset management is to maintain those things with routine maintenance, preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, and try to avoid that rehabilitation and reconstruction, because that's where the real expenses come. There's always the adage, you could pay me now or pay me later. It's the penny wise and pound foolish concept. It doesn't make sense to save pennies now when later it's going to cost you large amounts of dollars. I guess a comparison is that a deferred maintenance is like a debt with a very high interest rate. The debt will have to be paid at some time in the future, but the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost. Here's an example with pavement. Say a pavement section was built about 12 years ago. Today it needs a surface treatment, just something to seal those cracks, keep a good surface on it. That might run $20,000. Again, these are all hypothetical numbers. It's not something you're actually going to find, but it's going to cost an estimated $20,000. If you put it off for another 4 years, now those cracks have opened. You've got moisture going into that base. Now you're starting to affect the base. The base is starting to move. The surface is starting to crack. You're getting alligator cracking. So now you're going to have to do a little bit more work to maintain that road to get it up to a decent level, an acceptable service level for the public. And that is going to substantially increase what it's going to cost to do it. If you put it off till the end, you wait till it completely fails. Now you're spending $150, and that's on the low end if you're doing any kind of reconstruction. So what you could have done in 6-7 years ago and saved with $20,000, even if you had to do it 2 or 3 times over that 10, 12 years, it'd have been a lot cheaper than the $150,000 plus that you need to do. So again, trying to maintain them and keep them in good shape. This is kind of the basic concept behind an asset management plan. You do that preventive maintenance, you keep those things in good shape. Not only is the level of service, particularly for roads, going to maintain and be good, but the quality of operation of equipment is also going to be that way. So again, we're going to try to avoid these lower end reconstruction rehabilitation. That's kind of the focus on how you're going to look at when you maintain your items and controlling your assets and how they go. Now, as far as asset management, everybody maintains their assets in some capacity, whether it's just spraying it with a hose to keep it clean. It might not be the best way, but it's still a method of keep maintaining. We all do some type of management. Pavement management, there's always last year's budget, just following up what you did last year. maybe some incremental increases. The squeaky wheel, where you just try to appease the local complainer, resident that's making all the noise. You just try to appease them and you fix their road. That's not necessarily the way you need to approach it. There's also a standard program where it's established, where you've established a program based on periodic maintenance, such as a seal coat every 5 years or an overlay every 10 years. We've got the worst first, which is one of the worst, so to speak, is where you can do the major maintenance on the worst roads that are possible. This is where you spend all your money in one spot, and then the rest of the whole network of assets, or in this case, roadways, pavements, actually fail. And then it takes much more to bring everything back up. There's always the political pressure, using political considerations. When I worked as a consultant, there was always that November push, or the October push to get roads paved in different wards within a village or a city, just to show that that ward, the politician in that area was actually getting something done. That's the wrong way about going into it as well. Gut feeling is probably one of the more accurate ones of doing it, but the problem with that is that it doesn't have any documentation. It's hard to support and hard to explain. Even though you're knowing the right thing, you don't have that paperwork behind you. It's going to be hard to justify what you're doing. So we have a lot of maintenance decisions when we're looking at an asset management plan. Like what should we maintain? What should we maintain first? Do we focus on the best or the worst assets? If we have impacts, changing funding impacts, how will that affect us? We lose our CHIPS money. What's that going to do to our maintenance program? What is the most cost-effective maintenance for each asset? Just changing the oil in a vehicle is going to go a long way, keeping that asset long term as far as running well, especially with a lot of newer engines that are run by oil hydraulics. That oil gets gummy and clogs some of those intakes and those controls. It's going to mess up your vehicle quite well. I know it happened to my truck. What are the maintenance and rehabilitation requirements for the next 5 years? And how can we spend that funding in the most cost-effective way? So there's a variety of different types of asset management plans. There's simple ones, there's complex ones. Some of the complex ones typically are based in high-tech software, usually require a lot of effort. But again, you do the basic, collect the information. In these things, you do planning and maintenance strategies, you analyze data. Again, the software works to determine which are the best maintenance plans. You design maintenance, repair, rehabilitation projects. You follow through with the construction of those projects. You do research on life expectancy, costs, new alternatives, all these other things. These are all built into these complex asset management plans. And while they're useful and they give you good information, they kind of build on themselves over time. They're a little bit more difficult to use. You need to have somebody that's almost full-time on the software, otherwise the skills get lost. It takes a lot of programming, just a lot of manpower to get these things to work through this. And they're good, again, they're good ways of going, but if you don't have the manpower, it's going to be difficult. What we typically recommend is just keep it simple. The best approach is just, don't overcomplicate things, make it easy to use, easy to learn, systematic, and which keeps it good and gives you an organized approach. Be practical, because every day you're out there working on roads, you haven't got the time to go back and do some sort of data analysis. Just keep it practical. Keep it in front of you. Taking care of the roads and streets are an ongoing real life activity. So it needs to be both workable and realistic. And it needs to be understandable and accepted. If it's understandable, it's easy to explain. You've got paperwork behind you, and it makes it easier to be acceptable. So the simple asset management plan, again, it's going to have some of those attributes of a complex one. You're going to need to develop an inventory. You need to do inspections to determine conditions of each of those assets. And while you're there, or when you get back, determine what the causes of those distresses are. Because again, you want to try to focus on fixing the cause and not the symptom. So, and then you develop maintenance strategies, unit cost to them. You select an effective maintenance, cost-effective maintenance for that. And allows you to determine your funding needs. You can look at the whole thing and look at it and decide whether you have enough money or you're not going to have enough money. We all know where the answer typically ends up with that, but at least you can plan for 5 years in advance and just keep working with that. And if you've got an arguable, simple and understandable method of assessing your roads or any of your assets for that matter, it's going to be easier to explain. And there are times where you may be able to convince the board that you do need more funding. Then again, you interactively select and schedule projects. And as you're doing all this, you need to remember that if you put garbage in, you're not going to get anything good out. You know, if you're making up numbers, if you're fudging numbers, or you're not actually doing the inspections, you're just assuming what it could be, you're not going to get the results that you're anticipating and what you think you ought to be getting. When it comes to asset management, there's several ways of looking at it. What we recommend is basically doing a network overview, looking at the whole complex, looking at if you've got a network of roads, you want to look at them all and then compare them to each other. If you've got your equipment, signs, any of those things, you want to look at them overall, get an overall idea what the conditions are, get an overall idea of what each of the other ones are. And project level, that's going to take you down to specific projects. Dimension, the network level kind of goes through the whole gamut of what we've talked about, defines the limits, develop the inventory, again, observing the stresses, maintenance strategies, developing them, determining needs, and then implementing feedback systems. And the idea is basically improving the reliability of the whole system, but you're able to look at the whole system in one sitting. And that's going to allow you to compare apples to apples and not, opinions. The project level, that's basically, again, this is all included in one of those complex softwares, but in project level management, in this case, you're just looking at the project specific. You've decided that's the job you want to do, or the jobs that are going to be done. And you're looking at them a little bit closer. If you're going to do paving on a road, you want to make sure you don't have water valves or manholes or catch basins. If you're going to go through there and mill and fill or whatever, you're going to have to know where these are. And it's not unusual for them to be paved over. So again, you're going to look at each job a little bit more specifically. You're going to select the most cost-effective maintenance and rehabilitation. You're going to analyze the design requirements and the project requirements. And then you're going to develop a set of specifications, and then from there, a contract that you can put out the bid. So that's the project level. The maintenance, again, the network level, you're just looking at it so you compare apples to apples. The project level is after you decided what you want to do. The idea, again, is fix the problem, the right treatment at the right place at the right time. But let the distress tell you what needs to be done. Again, you want to fix the disease and not the symptoms. You don't want to cover up a pothole with 3 inches of asphalt because that pothole doesn't get fixed. It just waits till later to fall apart. So again, you don't want to fix the symptoms. I don't know if we can do these. I got a first set of questions here. We do have them. All right, the question is, question 1, do you have an inventory for assets you are responsible for? Second question is, do you have a plan for the next 5 years for those assets? And number 3, do you have enough funding to maintain those roads? And as you would expect, nobody has enough funding. As this pandemic continues, it looks like we're going to have less and less. So it looks like everybody has some sort of inventory for their assets. That's a great starting point. As far as plan for the next 5 years, that's encouraging too. And enough funding, that's disheartening, but it is reality. So, as I mentioned, it's good to see that you've got inventories for the assets that you own and you do have a plan for the next 5 years. That's very good. But as far as the funding, let me say that's disheartening. All right, let me get that off my screen. There we go. There we are. Oh, what assets should we look for? Well, in short, all of them. Anything you have to maintain, you want to be able to have some sort of inventory and know what condition they're in. But the obvious are the roads and streets, the culverts, your signs, guide rail, equipment, facilities, water systems. If you've got that, maybe you've got subsurface drainage systems or sewer lines. All of those you want to have some sort of inventory, and then you want some sort of way of being able to inspect and analyze them to make sure you're getting the best out of them. So we'll look at a few of them right here. When it comes to roads and streets, as far as the inventory, where can you get some of that information? Well, if you don't know what roads you have, there's always maps out there. The CHIPS report, everybody should be filing CHIPS report. And if you don't necessarily have access to those, you can go onto the internet. The local highway inventory is maintained by New York State DOT. You can go right to these links. I've got a handout available. Not sure if it's available yet, but there isn't a handout that goes along with this. If anybody needs it and can't get it, let us know. But there is a local highway inventory for local roads that's there. You go into there, you find your county, you find your town, and it'll give you a list of the roads that are there with a lot of the physical attributes that we'll be talking about coming up. And the same with county roads. So the information is available. One word of caution is if you've got a lot of or had a lot of development in your area in the last 10, 15 years, you may want to go back and verify that the mileage they have for you is the same as what you have in real life, because there have been some discrepancies. With our camp program, having the interns go out and measure all the roads and do the assessments, we've discovered, several towns have discovered they've got 6, 7, 8, 10 miles of roads they didn't know that they really could be accounting for. So it's always good to keep up with that. So as far as roads, some of the information you might want to know about when it comes to the inventory, identify a road identification number, a road name. Road identification number is typically a unique number. A descriptor of where that road section begins and where that road section ends. So if you're in the fields, you don't necessarily have to measure everything as you go through. But it is helpful to have that distance as well. So you need a mile point starting and a mile point ending. That'll give you your length. That and the width will give you a surface area. So if you're going to do any kind of paving, you can calculate your surface area in square feet or square yards or square meters or whatever it might be. Then multiply it by the thickness, and you can calculate what the tonnage you're going to be anticipating. Identify what surface type it is. Is it brick? Is it concrete? Is it asphalt? And then traffic and importance. I'll talk about those in the next few screens coming up. And then your shoulders. You've got a curved shoulder. That's going to make a difference on what type of repair you do. If you're just doing overlays and you've got a curve, you're going to bury it. So it's going to require some sort of mill and fill prior to any kind of overlay. And again, the type and the width is going to be handy to know when it comes time. Traffic volume, as I had mentioned, basically, these are going to help determine and prioritize which roads are the more important in that area. The traffic volume, basically, this is kind of how they rank relative to each other. So these are some are going to have a little bit more priority to the community and more demand as far as construction. Collector roads going to have a high volume of traffic. Local roads with trucks going to have a high volume of weight. The road to the schools can also have some weight issues as well with school buses. But as you can see, the residential roads, cul-de-sacs, they're going to be pretty low, and seasonal roads are not even really going to show on the radar a lot of times. But as far as importance, now this is important to the community itself. Again, the collector roads, that's how you get away and get back. Local roads with truck isn't going to be as high on the scale, but the road to school is going to be a lot higher because, again, it's travel to the school or travel to a hospital are going to have a high priority. Again, the residential roads and seasonal roads are going to be somewhat smaller. When it comes to looking at the conditions for the pavement itself, what are you looking at? Well, you want to identify what the distress type is. Is it alligator cracking? Is it longitudinal cracking, transverse cracking, potholes? You look at that type of distress that you're observing, then you determine the severity of it. How bad is it? How wide are the cracks? And how should I evaluate those? And then how often does it show up? Is it just a corner intersection where the problem is, or is it the whole road? And that's going to basically determine, your amount of work that you're doing and what it's going to take to upgrade that roadway itself. And you say, well, how do we evaluate those roads accurately or consistently in some manner? Federal Highways put out a distress identification manual. Again, this is available on the internet. And the link is on that handout when we can get it out. But it goes through each of the distresses, how to rate them, recommended repairs. It's pretty thorough. It goes through a lot of examples, pictures, and it covers a good wide range of different materials. Then there's pavement maintenance. Again, this is focused a little bit more on pavement, but it'll allow you to, again, assess your roads on a simple level to where you can determine which ones are in greater need. As I mentioned with that curve before, the order of work, you want to do preventive maintenance, you want to keep those goods good. You want to do the routine maintenance. Of course, you're probably going to want to do that anyway. And then corrective maintenance, fix problem areas, and that'll bring that whole road back up. Once you get to defer work, that may be good on brand new roads. It may be also applied to poor roads. So again, deferring the work, if it's going to cost too much to fix, maybe you just put it off because you're going to have to rebuild it anyway. But once you get to the rehabilitation, reconstruction, as we mentioned before, they can get pretty expensive. So they're going to be lower on the maintenance or the priority order of getting done. And culverts are another one of those assets that we're going to look at. A lot of times they're overlooked, but they're just as important as your roads. If one of the culvert fails, essentially you've got a failed road. It can go off in years without being inspected or anything and still not give you problems. But it is always good to keep an eye on what you have. And if you're going to do any new paving or anything, probably a good idea to check those culverts, make sure they're in good shape. That you're not going to have to replace them in 3 years after you've done a reconstruction on your road. Again, just another asset that's out there. Some of the things to look at. Again, you want to know where it is, so the road name is going to be helpful. It's going to have a specific ID, so you can identify that specific one. Having some sort of a location, whether it's a GPS or stationing, is going to help you find it in days like today where they're buried in snow. If there's a skew, that's going to be important too. That's going to change the estimated length of what that culvert's actually going to be. If it's perpendicular, it's going to be a lot smaller than if it has a skew to it. Depth of cover is going to be an important thing to know. Again, these are all inventory things that won't change over time, but knowing what that is, the depth of inventory, if it's 12 inches, it makes it feasible to change. If it's 12 feet, now you may need different types of equipment. Number of pipes is useful. The length of the pipe, the width of the pipe, and the height of the pipe will go kind of hand in hand with the shape. If you got a squash pipe, the width is greater than the height. Or if you got a circular pipe, they're going to be the same. Knowing the material is useful. That'll help you determine with the install date how long that material actually lasts. If you're only getting 5 years out of a galvanized pipe, maybe you need to consider a different type of pipe. And any of these, it's important to have some sort of layout diagram that gives you an idea where it is and what it, how it's laid out, because it allows you to provide a picture when you need to. And a lot of this information is going to be imperative when it comes to getting reimbursed from FEMA should a big flood come through. If you don't have any of this information, they're not going to help you. You'll have to replace that pipe with no support. And there are several ways of doing it. This is out of our drainage manual, just basic, simple inspection form. Allows you to document what you see out there. It allows you to identify where you are. Again, another diagram kind of shows where any kind of problems are. Allows you to evaluate each one of these things. This is, again, a simple one. Any kind of recommendations, anything that needs to be done sooner than later. And I mentioned this is available in our roadside drainage manuals. So that's available at any point. So the distresses, what might you be looking at? Again, you want to identify these distresses and the damage types, because any certain types of damage is going to cause other problems later on. How is the shape? If it's starting to sag in the middle, maybe you've got a loss of support in the center of the pipe. Maybe that's due to piping or poor compaction, but again, it's going to tell you a little bit about what the problem is. Scour, obviously, in the inlet or the outlet. What's the condition of the pipe? Is the bottom corroded? Is it still in good shape but starting to corrode? The embankments. How about your ends? This picture kind of shows one that's been damaged. That's completely. That's going to almost completely restrict any kind of flow through there. You'll get some, but if any vegetation or debris gets clogged in front of it, it's just going to wash over the road, and that'll again create other problems. The same with the joints. Failure of the joints can allow the support around the pipe to fail. Fill the pipes with debris, but also sediment within the debris too. That's going to reduce your flow capacity. So some of the things to look at. So some of the simple things, we set up a Cornell Asset Management software that basically focuses on roads and culverts at this point. We've added that this past summer. Again, does the inventory, helps you identify the conditions based on certain parameters, allows you to assign repairs, diagnose the current status of that network, and allows you to develop a plan based on a simple formula. And we'll go through some of that as we go. But allows you to update costs, as you can see right here. On the right here, that you can see there's repair costs over in here. 0.68, square foot, square yard, square meter, whatever you want. There's an estimated life for that, each of the repairs. In here, push that one. You can see that's amongst a lot of the repairs that are within the software. Gives you your 0.068 cost dollars per square foot, estimated life improvement. So you can adjust these and it'll help you get a little bit better organized, and it's there for you. When it comes to applying repair, again, here's our chip seal again. Identifying the surface treatments, that's the repair category. Allows you to select the repair, and as you select the repair, it also identifies based on that 6.8 cents per square foot, a cost that it's going to do that section of pavement with 24,000 square feet of pavement. And as I mentioned, it gives you a repair cost estimate. Again, this is just a network level. We're not getting into the minutia. And the software also has some maintenance decision trees that need to be, they're linked internally. And each of them are linked to a repairs, and then they're used to calculate a condition index. For pavement is pavement condition index, culvert condition index. And how does that work? This is a decision tree right here for the asphalt. So you can see right here, we've got our distresses, drainage, roughness, longitudinal cracking, alligator edge cracking, patching, rutting, bleeding, raveling, and you assess them based on the severity in most cases, or extent and severity based on the cracks and the rutting. And by selecting those will help determine within the software where you're going. When you select each of those categories, so we'll say longitudinal transverse cracking, you select the medium, medium severity, medium extent. That translates over into here as a deduction point of 6 points. Again, PCI calculates from 100 and deducts points for each distress that's identified. So in this case, we're losing 6 points right here. As you select that middle of the road, it also recommends a repair category that goes with it. Within these repair categories is where your repairs are. So as I mentioned, the deduction values are basically the numbers in this square here. And it's based on out of 100. The highest score you can get is a 94, and that's because there are several items that deduct 2 points automatically, 3 of them. So the PCI example on how that works. This is a pavement. They've done their inspection. They've determined that the condition deducts 12 points for longitudinal cracks, 2 for edge cracking, 2 for bleeding, 2 for roughness, and 5 for drainage. So you add them up and subtract them from 100, and you get a PCI pavement condition of 77. Now, one thing to note, this isn't a PCI you would get from AASHTO or anything. This is just a generated deductive value, but it helps identify roads as they go along. It gives you an identification of what condition they're really in. So I mentioned the simple priority formulas. And it's they don't use cost comparisons. When you start throwing money into things, it skews views and opinions. So the idea is basically let the conditions tell you what needs to be done. So we don't use any kind of cost comparisons. That comes after you determine what really needs to be done. It doesn't include any future deterioration. It doesn't do any analytics, iterations, or any of that to help determine what that future is going to be. And it's easy to modify. Again, we want to try to keep it simple. So for the asphalt, the roads and street priority equation, this is basically it. You've got these K factors. They're basically weighting factors. If there's something you want to focus a little more on, then you would put a little bit more money in front, or not money, but a value in front of it, 1 through 10. And that'll slant your recommended repairs and your priorities. Again, it needs to be modifiable and work to what you need to do. But the repair category, the S right here is your main one. It's your repair category, priority value. In this case, you're going to get preventive maintenance, and corrective maintenance, and routine maintenance. They're going to be 4, 5, and 6. Your reconstruction, your rehabilitation are going to be 1, 2. They're going to have a smaller number, so it's not going to have that multiplying factor. So it's not going to rise to the priorities as much. Again, the importance are 1 through 5, low importance 1, high importance 5. That'll kick that priority number up higher. The same with the traffic. The condition is basically based off of that PCI, the pavement condition and index, and that's divided by 10. That's a determined value from elsewhere in the software. Then we have the drainage and the roughness. And these are essentially good, bad, and ugly. And then the deductive values for those. So it's pretty straightforward, and it is manipulative. Not manipulative, but easy to modify. Culver priorities set up very similar. Again, we've got a repair strategy value here. We've got our traffic importance. These are the same for the roads because they are under those same roads. So the traffic and the importance of those roads still hold that credibility. In this case, we've got our culvert condition, again, divided by 10. And now in the end, we've got flow and then environmental. The flow basically is just a good, bad, and the ugly on how well that culvert passes on a normal basis. Does it never flood? Is a good one that you never have problems with it? Then you would give it a 1. Sometimes it floods. Maybe it's a 4. If it floods every time it rains, then maybe you've got a 7, and that's going to kick its priority up. And we worked with Water Resources Institute at Cornell, and they had requested we kind of add an environmental factor for the aquatic organism passage. Now, this isn't going to apply to every culvert. There's going to be the NA, which is going to be a 0 value. And then it's going to be, again, good, bad, and ugly. If it's good, it's not going to rise to need to be higher priority. If it allows anything to pass through, that's good. If you might have a little bit of perching or difficulty for any kind of critter to crawl through, that would be a 4. If it's a perched, you've got feet between the outlet and the discharge, or where the outlet comes out and where it lands below, then it's going to be a 7. Nothing's going to be able to go through there. It's just again, just kind of a means of identifying critical culverts. And then everything is kicked out into a spreadsheet. That gives you all the information that you had, again, across the top, your identification number, your name, where it starts, where it ends, your mile points, your length, your width, your lanes, surface type, shoulder type, traffic importance, survey date. Again, your PCI, it'll kick out a number. It'll tell you what that condition index is. Typically, if it's a good condition, you might just need minor repairs. Repair category, and then it also gives you a priority value on which ones ought to be done. In this case, drainage work is 102. Drainage work, fixing that drainage is going to make those roads go a lot longer. It's going to last a lot more. And to reconstruct is low on the priority level, and that's only a 20. So it kind of gives you the recommendations on what you do, and then you can break that spreadsheet into a plan and give you an idea what you need to do and where you need to go and what the work is necessary for it. So the software, again, that's available to anybody that wants it. Just let us know. Signs are another critical asset that we ought to take a look at and keep in mind that it is part of our asset requirements, particularly when it ends up in liability. This is just an inspection form for signs, and this is available through us as well. It just kind of goes through the location, the road number, bridges, road name, intersection, direction of the sign, distance in feet. Just kind of goes through some of the things that you might want to look at if there's any problems. Again, in-field inspection is going to be helpful. An inventory for those signs. Again, you want to know where it is, the road ID. Probably going to have some sort of municipal ID. And I need to know what type of sign is it. Stop sign, yield ahead, curve. Maybe the MUTCD description, R1-1. Then a descriptor to it, stop sign. Or maybe it's size and dimensions. If you got to replace it, it's nice to know what was there. It's not unusual for signs to disappear. So it's good to know what you had there so you can replace it in kind. In the colors, the legend size, and it's all documentable information. The plaque material. Was that material, is that sign a wooden sign? Is it a steel sign? Is it aluminum? Again, just knowing that information is going to help you plan a little bit better when it comes to replacement. Define sign face material. Are you using engineering grade, or is it something else? knowing where it is, whether it's a GP identification or some sort of station. If that sign is missing, and you don't know it, you're not going to know that sign was ever there if you don't have some sort of location. If you drive by that location, there's no sign. Pretty good indication it's no longer there. Identifying which side of the road it is, face direction. Signs will wear a lot quicker if they face south and west, or if they're blowing sand off a beach or something. That face direction is going to become critical as far as the life of that sign. They'll degrade a lot quicker. And the installation date is always a useful information. And again, the same information with supplemental plaques. They're going to be important to have on there. Again, they provide that additional information as far as what's coming up. And then the support posts. Identify the posts, number of posts, type of posts, size of posts, material, base, pipe, installation date. It's going to give you an idea of what you have out there. It's a pretty classic sign here. You've got a little bit down here, another section here, and then another one here. Now I'm not going to say it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying it's going to be a lot to keep track of. Sign inspection. Just knowing what's there and looking at your signs is always useful. Going through there, doing a daytime inspection, seeing if there's anything shielding that sign, preventing it from being visible. Again, that's how you communicate with the public. Then essentially, if it's there, then that allows you to assess the rest of the sign as far as condition goes. If it's not there, then you can identify it during the day that it's not there, and then put out an order to actually recommend that it's replaced. But again, some of the other things, daytime visibility, again, whether it's there or covered. But the more critical thing is the retroreflectivity. Can it be seen at night? This sign here, as you can see, that one cannot be seen at night. You barely see it in the day. So again, these things are important when it comes to informing the public what they need to know. As far as assessing the retroreflectivity, there's several methods of the Manual of Uniform Traffic Code. The MUTCD retroreflectivity evaluations. You can do assessment methods where you go out there and actually assess them or compare them to other signs, and there's management methods. Just replacing them over time, or just a blanket replacement to an area, or you set up control signs where the signs you set up in the road are set up at the same time in the same direction at a specified site. And as you monitor that side, that on the sign on that site, to see how it degrades, and when it finally drops below the minimum retroreflective level, then it's time to replace the rest of it. But all these procedures and all this is available through our website. We've got a pretty good description in there to help you get through there. If there's any questions, by all means, let us know. But again, that's all on our website as well. And then signs have priority. They have important signs should be maintained and should be replaced as soon as possible. You've got your stop and yield sign, stop ahead. Any of these signs, typically what it looks like, they're all basically wherever there's going to be a conflict, they're the high priority. Intersections, stop and yield, stop ahead, pedestrian, bicyclist, school crossings, again, all potential points of conflict. Do not pass, do not enter, wrong way. Again, you're going to conflict with, you're going the wrong way with the traffic. Railroad crossings, that's a big conflict there if you get hit. And then the turns and the curve signs. It's good to know what's coming up, because it gives that driver a little bit of warning of what the conditions of the roads are. And those should take precedence over other signs. And then they should be followed by warning signs, other regulatory signs, and then guide signs. So there is a precedence and an order that they ought to be replaced and maintained. But again, having an inspection program is really going to help identify where those signs are. Guide rail is another inventory that ought to be kind of looked at. Again, you want to know where it is, ID, some sort of ID to it. Is it what type do you have? You have the cable, you have the W shape. Again, where its location is, the length of it, which side of the road, maybe even what the rail ends are, and then install date. You start to assess the conditions. Is that this rail right here, this cable stay rail here, that is not going to really guard anybody from anything, let alone guide. And it'll guide you right into the ditch and hold you up. But it's not going to really be effective as far as what it needs to be doing. Post conditions, again, the rail ends, knowing what your posts are. Are they really going to hold when they get hit? Understand what's out there. Do your regular inspections. That right there is a big liability should someone actually sideswipe that rail. The vegetation is critical too. In front of it, not only in front of it, but behind it. Large trees behind the guide rail are just as dangerous as they are on the front of the guide rail. And you say why is basically because those rails flex. They're not solid. They flex when they get hit and they bow in. If you've got something close to it, you're going to hit that tree as that rail flexes. So understanding where the vegetation is and keeping it clear is good. And in the height of that rail above the pavement. There's a lot of times that roads have been paved, layered and layered, and that rail just stays where it is. And next thing you know, it's only 12 inches tall relative to the traveling pavement. So again, just keeping an eye on that kind of stuff and understanding there's other ways of doing it and things to look at. Again, fleet, your equipment, those are all pretty critical. Again, you're going to identify what your equipment is, type of equipment, date of purchase, replacement costs. And you've got a form for this. This is out of running your highway department. It's Appendix 7. Gives you a fleet inventory, allows you to do all these items on the left that are important to know. This is just an example of what one looks like when it's filled out. But again, it's just knowing what you have, and then it allows you to budget that amount, how much you're going to save for that replacement cost in the future. And again, inventory of your equipment, your tools, other machinery. It's good to have that inventory. In fact, by Highway Law 142, it's required to be filed to the town board on or before September 30th each year. So having that inventory is going to be very useful, and plus also help you be in compliance. And then these forms are all available through us as well. When it comes to vehicle inspections, again, another critical thing. You got your annual inspection, go through that vehicle every year, just double check, see what's going on, do a good thorough inspection. I spent quite a few years working for UPS before I went back to school to be an engineer. And one of the things that they were most impressive on was doing inspection, preventive maintenance, PMIs, they call them, preventive maintenance inspections. So the vehicles would be inspected, anything within the facility would be inspected, conveyors mostly. But again, having that regular inspection is going to help identify problem areas and problems before they show up and end up costing you money. So just having those vehicles inspections. I delivered for UPS for a while as well. And every time you went out in a UPS truck, you had to do a daily vehicle inspection. Identify whether the lights were out or a lens was cracked or anything. Just document what it is. When you brought that piece of equipment in, typically the mechanics would repair all that stuff overnight, so it'd be ready to go. But again, it would also allow you to identify where there's going to be some more major problems. The driver daily inspection for the vehicles. Again, a different type of one here, the vehicle inspection report. And then an equipment inspection form every day as you use it. Just basically checking the box. Is it burning oil? Is it smoke a lot? What's it? Just an inspection. Just give you an idea what is happening within that equipment. Again, all of these are available from us if you need these. Again, you can develop your own, but these are a good starting point for you. So a simple process, basically you develop that inventory. You assess the conditions. You develop maintenance and rehab alternatives, and they be the ones that you would use, the ones that you would be most effective as far as repairing and upgrading, whether it's a road or a vehicle or a guide rail or whatever it might be. Assign those repair alternatives so you know what really needs to be done on each of those assets. Then you prioritize them. Which ones can you afford? Which ones are going to be more cost effective long term? And then from that, you can generate budgets and reports and all that. So with the implementation, when it comes to any kind of asset management plan, if you don't implement it, it's just a lot of mumbo jumbo you spend a lot of time working on. What it does do is allows you to communicate with the board. And part of that implementation is communicating with the board, letting them know what you plan on doing, why you plan on doing it, and having the documentation behind you to support that. It's amazing how much more support you'll get if you have an objective evaluation of what you want to do as opposed to a personal opinion. Then you schedule the work. It's got to be done. So it allows you to schedule that work. And then there's always updating. To be successful with any asset management plan, you need to continue to do those inspections. You don't want to let a culvert go for 10 years or your pavement to go for 10 years. Even if it's not every year you do those inspections, at least every other year or every 3 years in certain. When it comes to vehicles, you want that daily report if you can. Annual inspections on that because they work a lot more and you rely on them a lot more and they're not as durable as say a pavement would be. So updating that on a regular basis is going to be critical. That's really going to lead to your success as far as bringing that level of service for any of your pieces of asset up to a good condition to where all you have to do is minor maintenance as opposed to reconstruction, rehabilitation. Some of the benefits of an asset management plan, again, you're focusing on what needs to be fixed. You're looking at everything as a whole. So it allows you to have more efficient use of limited resources. You're not fixing the road because the lady's screaming or whoever it is may be screaming that the road's a mess. What you're doing is looking at the whole network and you're fixing and trying to bring it up to a satisfactory level to where it's going to benefit the community as a whole. You don't want to forget those other smaller roads and those other smaller problems and where the problem areas are. Of course, you definitely want to take care of them, but they should dictate what is priority. It allows you to substantiate your results. You've got documentation and inspections. All that stuff is going to help support any kind of argument you want to make as far as when things should be done and when they shouldn't be done. Again, back to the CAMP program, we've had several municipalities put the reports, student reports up on the website. And when people call and say, when's my road going to get fixed? They'll direct them to the website and say, well, here's our plan. And a lot of times that'll appease what they need to know. They know that there's other out there, but it helps substantiate the results in the eyes of the public as well. It allows you to determine the conditions and keep a good bead on what those conditions are going to be. And it helps facilitate better communication between the public and the town board. So there are some real benefits to it. And it provides you with more accurate information. Having that good information is going to be very useful as far as planning and budgeting or adjusting when changes happen. And it improves cooperation. If you can help substantiate those results, explain them, and justify why you're going to do certain things, it's going to improve the cooperation. People are going to be a lot more understandable about what you're doing. So it does have its benefits, not necessarily always financial, but there are others. It allows you to get other people involved, allows them to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. And it helps communication and cooperation. So I guess we've got our last of our PDH questions. Mr. Behind the Scenes, are you there? Okay. There we are. So the question is pavement level, network level pavement management systems focus on details of a project to develop a final plan, true or false? Second question is asset management process does not include an easy to learn method, a systematic or good organized approach, a practical method, be understandable and accepted, and predict future condition. Third question is pavement management focuses on keeping good roads good, true or false? And the fourth question is a good inventory is essential for an asset management program, true or false? Well, it looks like a lot of the voting is slowed down here. Number one, network level pavement management systems focus on the details of a project to develop a final plan. That would actually be false. That would be a project level. Once you decide what you're going to do, then you can get right into the minutia of what you want to do on that project itself. Simple asset management plan does not include predicting future. Again, that takes a lot of iteration and strong software to actually make that work. So essentially, easy to learn, definitely, but you want that a simple asset management plan to be easy to learn. And you want it to be practical. So again, predicting future conditions is the answer for that one. Pavement management focuses on keeping good roads good. That is correct. And then good inventory is essential for an asset management plan. That is correct as well. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna click there. So as far as any of that camp software, if anybody's interested in that, again, that's available. You can just get that purchase that for your use. Or if you think that you don't have the manpower or the time, we do run a pavement management summer intern program where we find an intern that works with the municipality to do all that legwork and all that paperwork and develop a report for the first time through. As I mentioned, we've now added culverts to that. So if we've got extra time, we can actually run out and do the culverts as well. A win-win for that. And as far as future offerings, we've got every Monday at 11 o'clock, David does the bumper banter. That's on Facebook. So look for that. It just kind of gives you the updates on what's going on, the latest information. Then on Tuesdays, we've been holding these webinars. Next Tuesday, February 9th, you've got controlling potential drainage problems. Again, all these are from 9 to 10. Tuesday, February 16th, application rates for snow and ice chemicals. And on Tuesday, the 23rd, February, keeping everyone safe in the work zone. So that's what's coming up, and we hope to have you guys participate in that. And any questions or anything like that, then these are our contacts here. Well, if there's anything you guys need or anything you have questions about, let us know. We're here to help. Right. David, anything else you want to add on there? Guess I'm alone here.
I think David stepped off for another meeting.
Oh. Okay. I guess I was glad I'm not relying on him. But all right.
I got your back.
I don't know if we had any questions or anything for that. Do you know?
Nope, just a couple of thank yous for your presenting.
Great. Those are easy answers. You're
Right.
welcome. But all right, I guess we're done.
Yeah, I will close out the meeting.